See if this works. Okay, thank you everybody for joining. I'm going to show a few introductory slides and then we will get going. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat. And you can, if you can add your organization or any affiliation, in particular a neighborhood council next to your name. And if you want to add your pronouns, that's great. And we'd love to hear what brought you here this evening. So if you could share that, that would be super helpful. Our mission is actually quite simple. We want to advance sustainability across the city of LA through advocacy, sharing of best practices, and community action, which is very much aligned with what neighborhood councils are up to. We have several, I guess, 4 very active committees and 1 not very active right now, working group on sustainability guidelines for developers, but we do have some great sustainability guidelines for developers that are available online. And we will have report backs from all of these committees toward the end of the meeting. Housekeeping, we are recording this and we will post it to our YouTube channel. Please add your neighborhood council or organization next to your name and your pronouns if you want, and introduce yourself in the chat. You can use the raise hand feature to participate. We will be we'll just have a lot of discussion. So, you know, I think we'll probably be a small group, and so we can really just get to know our new deputy mayor and find out what she's up to and how we can support her efforts. We have community agreements that we will review in a minute, and we will ask you to complete an evaluation at the end. So here is our agenda. After we've talked with the deputy mayor, we will be discussing and I hope voting on these 3 items: municipal lobbying, neighborhood council meetings, and whether or not they should be virtual or hybrid or whatever, and the Murphy oil drilling site in the West Adams area. And then we'll hear back from committees, as I mentioned, and then anybody's available or able to make announcements. And then, as I said, we'll do evaluations. Here are our community agreements. They're pretty basic. If you can show your face, that's really nice, because so we can build community. We are going to, increasingly, we're going to have more in-person events, but since we're so dispersed across the city, I think Zoom will always be our, and because people really, really love Zoom now, I think Zoom will always be our friend. So if we can see you, it helps. Assume good intent, give people the benefit of the doubt, demonstrate respect and appreciation. The chat is on. We love you using the chat, but just make sure you're, you know, talking about the stuff we're talking about and not getting too much of on a tangent, and also to be that you're being respectful. Listen intently. Step forward and then step back, meaning if you're one of those folks who tends to be really vocal, maybe you kind of monitor that and hold back a little bit so to create space for somebody else. And if you're one of those folks who doesn't tend to talk, maybe step up and talk a little bit. I say this every time and it never seems to work because the same people always talk a lot and the same people don't talk a lot, but something to think about. Be as concise as possible so we can have as many voices as possible, and of course, have fun. Okay, that is it. I am going to introduce Nancy Sutley now. She is our new deputy mayor for energy and sustainability. And deputy mayor, if I get anything wrong, just let me know. I did a little research on you, and some of which I knew and some of which I did not know, so that was sort of fun. I knew that you'd been the chief sustainability officer for DWP, and I knew that you'd previously been in the Obama administration, which is fun for a lot of us. I did not know that you'd basically had a very similar position under Villaraigosa's tenure back, well, you can tell us if you want, back when he was mayor. So that's sort of interesting. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, how you're circling back to a similar role and how that might feel very different or not very different this time. I think that's, oh, and you're also on the board of the Metropolitan Water District, which is super exciting for us. We are actually working on spending some money that they give us to get the word out about water. So we're working with them more closely than we did in the past. Okay, so I'm going to give you the floor to make, and as I mentioned earlier to you, you can make some introductory comments, and then I might follow up with a few questions just sort of to set the stage, and then I'm going to open it up to everybody for their thoughts. And then the deputy mayor will need to leave us at about 7:30, which works out pretty well because we have several things to vote on and discuss this evening. Okay, thank you. The floor is yours.
Sorry, I was just trying to unmute myself here. So I seem to all have disappeared. Well, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. I think you're fine.
Okay, great. Thanks. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to have an opportunity to spend a little time with all of you, and just say up front, big thanks to all of you for, I know you all put a lot of time and effort into your service on neighborhood councils and your participation in this group as well. So I've been the deputy mayor for energy and sustainability, as Lisa said. I've been in City Hall, back in City Hall now for about 4 months, not quite 4 months. And I was came over from the Department of Water and Power, where I was the chief sustainability officer, where I'd been since 2014. And prior to that, I was in Washington, D.C. as chair of the White House Council on Environmental Quality. And prior to that, I was in City Hall as deputy mayor for energy and environment for Mayor Villaraigosa. So I keep telling everybody I'm demonstrating how much I believe in recycling, including myself. But happy to be back in City Hall. And I guess I would start by saying, I know that you all are aware that, Mayor Bass came to City Hall very focused on addressing the issues of housing and homelessness, and recognizing that the crisis that's occurring on our streets every day. And so she's very focused on addressing that and comprehensively. But the mayor also recognizes that there are other crises that the city has to address, including the climate crisis. So I might start by just talking a little bit about how things are structured in the mayor's office. Mayor Bass announced the first 2 deputy mayor appointments that she announced in January. End of January was myself and Randall Winston, who's the deputy mayor for infrastructure. And so the way we have things divided up among the 2 of us is I oversee all the city's sustainability efforts, and we'll talk more about kind of where we are and where we think we're going, as well as the Department of Water and Power, and trying to address the issues around energy and water as well. And as Lisa noted, I also am one of the city's representatives on the board of directors for the Metropolitan Water District. Randall Winston, the deputy mayor for infrastructure, has got the 5 public works bureaus, LADOT and Caltrans, LADOT and Metro, sorry, and some part of Rec and Parks. And then I think some of the other areas that you may be interested in. So Rachel Freeman is the deputy mayor for business and economic development. So she's got both city planning and Department of Building and Safety in her portfolio, as well as both the airport, both LAWA and the port. And I think we just started the other day our sort of final deputy mayor. There's a number of others. A guy named Jared Rivera will be doing sort of community engagement, including a lot of the sort of neighborhood issues. And if you have questions about others in the mayor's office, or sort of how we're splitting up duties, I can certainly spend a little more time going into that. And then just overall, so we're still staffing up. As you may remember, with the sort of shortened transition, some of the staff who were in the mayor's office under Mayor Garcetti were, offered the opportunity to stay on for an additional 120 days to help get things started. So, and in that process, we're kind of working with them and also evaluating if there were folks who we wanted to stay on. So that process is now completed, and all of us are trying to bring on some additional staff. You also may know that, we started, Mayor Bass started fairly late in the budget process for the upcoming fiscal year or so. We were sort of still assessing kind of where we were budget wise from the mayor's office. And so we're still waiting for our final numbers. And so, to know kind of how much staffing all of us will be able to have. Obviously, we continue to, all of us work closely with the departments that we interact with, and make sure that we're, sort of accessing and leveraging the resources at the city departments as well. I'll just say a few more things. It's probably better to get to questions and just make sure we cover the topics you all are interested in. So as I said, the mayor recognizes that, one of the biggest crises that the city faces is the climate crisis. But she also recognizes that the efforts under Mayor Garcetti to set out a roadmap for Los Angeles when it comes to sustainability and carbon neutrality is a very useful document and very useful goals, very ambitious goals. And so, the mayor really wants us to build upon that ambitious roadmap. So to really try to think about what we need to do over the next 4 or 8 years to make real progress towards those ambitious goals that are in the sustainability plan and in LA's Green New Deal. I think the mayor also recognizes that the effects of climate change and the persistent environmental harms that many in our city have faced, the harms around air pollution and toxic pollution, they've fallen disproportionately on communities of color and the poor. And so as we move forward to try to deliver on our ambitious decarbonization and sustainability goals, we have to do it in a way that's centered on community, that it addresses environmental injustices, and brings people in, and also looking at opportunities to create jobs and economic opportunity through this transformation. And the mayor very much believes in collaboration, in accountability, and in transparency. And so we will endeavor to carry out that everything we do with those values in mind. And so, for my particular group, we are, we're really looking to coordinate across city departments to engage meaningfully with with residents across Los Angeles and businesses across Los Angeles, with stakeholders such as yourselves who bring so much to the table. And then particularly for my group, also working with the Department of Water and Power on a day-to-day basis, and really looking at how we can support the efforts towards zero emission buildings, zero emission vehicles, and carbon neutrality, reducing harmful air pollution, and ensuring that our infrastructure is sustainable and resilient. So we will we're trying to focus on how do we show progress towards the 5 zeros that were laid out in LA's Green New Deal around the carbon-free grid, zero carbon transportation and buildings, zero waste and zero wasted water. So looking at some of the efforts underway at LADWP around LA 100 and getting to 100% carbon-free grid by 2035, also supporting and ensuring that DWP keeps equity in the forefront as they move forward with the LA 100 equity strategies coming out this summer, looking at how do we accelerate progress towards zero carbon transportation, both in terms of infrastructure, as well as the other levers around both LADOT and Metro. When it comes to waste, one of the big efforts that we have to get our arms around is around organics, and how do we meet both the state goals or the state law and goals to get to zero waste. Looking at, we had a very wet year this year, but drought is always a specter looming over us. We just came through the 3 driest years on record in Los Angeles, and now a very wet year. But all of our water supply sources are stressed, whether it's the State Water Project or the LA Aqueduct itself, and of course the Colorado River, are all very stressed. And so looking at how we can increase local water supplies, starting with really focus on water conservation, as well as local water supply projects that will help increase our reliability and resilience when it comes to water. And looking at, finally, and then we can go to questions, looking at issues around climate resilience. So the city has, I think, made some good steps forward around heat and extreme heat. So we have our chief heat officer, Marta Segura, who also runs the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office, and looking at what are the strategies to really make sure that we are addressing resilience around extreme heat in a way that recognizes that, again, that burden falls disproportionately on certain parts of the city and among certain communities, and really trying to find equitable ways to address extreme heat. So maybe I'll stop there and take your questions.
Oh, great. That was super helpful. And it was so comprehensive that I actually don't have any questions for the moment myself. So I will let folks who do have questions or comments go ahead. John, please go ahead and please introduce yourself. Everybody, before you speak, please introduce yourself.
Will do. Thank you. John Hales. I'm from Northridge South. We have a considerable amount of issues, etc. Your being here is absolutely a blessing. Thank you so much for taking time to be here. One of the major concerns as we look at our new mayor moving in is the fact that each of these different departments that she's suggesting with sustainability in mind, that these things are going to improve and move in one common direction. What we know from day one, once we took our positions here, our full-time overpaid position as volunteers, is that there are several individual towers at the city And when you talk to one, they don't talk to the next tower. A quick example, we go to a project that's being developed. And we say, those trees that were there, the 30 or 40 trees that were there, they're tearing them down. And you call building and safety, and what do they say? We don't do trees. So as we go through this checklist and trying to find somebody that can address the developer, we're finding out that they don't communicate with each other. And what is it that the mayor is going to do to bring all of these towers together so that they communicate not only with each other, but with the 99 neighborhood councils? Thank you.
Well, thanks for the question, and thank you all for your well-paid positions where you give a lot of time to the city for free, and we said we on behalf of the mayor, we really appreciate it. Yeah, no, I think it is since I'm not a newbie to city government, I am totally aware of the issues that you're raising, and I think fortunately they're not new. I think there's a couple of things that that we're trying to do, and I think it's really around making sure at the top, sort of in the mayor's office, that we are both sort of modeling good behavior for city departments with respect to how we work together. So I'm every day working with Randall Winston, overseeing public works, and with Rachel Freeman. I think the mayor's trying to address obviously the issues around housing and homelessness in a more comprehensive way. But you're right. It's sort of an ongoing issue to try to ensure that that city departments are talking to each other. We've both Randall and I, and particularly Randall, spent some amount of time already talking to folks about how we can better coordinate around our tree canopy, and making sure that, as you said, that one department knows what the other is doing, and that everybody keeps in mind some of our sustainability goals. So, we're Mayor Garcetti, had an executive directive requiring all city departments to have a chief sustainability officer. They had been meeting monthly. We may change the frequency of those meetings, but I think that's an important group to ensure that departments are communicating with each other. And then when it comes to the work that all of you do, you were tremendous eyes and ears for the city, and let us know when you see something that's that you think requires some attention to address where departments aren't coordinating with each other. And so please always feel free to reach out to me and to my colleagues, and appreciate your bringing this up.
Thank you. Before I go to Glenn, I actually do have a follow-up question. When you were speaking earlier about the structure of the deputy mayors, it occurred to me that it might be a little bit of a matrix structure, and that, of course, city planning, for example, has a lot to do with sustainability. So I suppose that sort of forces those conversations between you and your fellow deputy mayors, and that probably is a great thing. I just welcome any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. And I think sustainability is one of those issues that cuts across many city departments. And so, as you may have noticed from my bio, I've been doing this for a long time. So I get that, and especially, knowing the city reasonably well, I sort of I understand sort of where some of those levers are. And so really trying to reach out to my colleagues. We meet as deputy mayors, in addition to our sort of meetings with the chief of staff and with the mayor. We also meet with each other, and we're really always looking for ways to coordinate and to collaborate. So and I think for the departments as well, it's good when they know somebody in the mayor's office is paying attention to issues. tends to get their attention. And so, I think all of us are trying to, trying to issue spot with departments. And then I think also, as we sort of develop more of our kind of processes with the department. So how do we, sort of lay out goals for general managers, work with our commissioners, and make sure that that we're communicating sort of the mayor's priorities and values. And again, just encourage you to reach out, so we know what's going on in your neighborhoods.
Okay, great. Thank you. Glenn, go ahead.
Thank you. Glenn Bailey. I've got a number of hats. I put them into chat, but just so you know, I'm involved with the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils, as well as citywide LA Neighborhood Council Coalition, as well as the Neighborhood Council budget advocates, as well as individual neighborhood council. So you were probably involved with the Million Trees effort.
Why does that always keep coming up?
Well,
That's the first thing I thought of when I realized that she'd been mayor before. That's exactly where I went too. So that's funny.
So it's aspirational. So I just want to, so I realize there's competing interests that we're trying to house the homeless. We're trying to do affordable housing. We have a water shortage that's not resolved, right? Or not predictable. But I want to talk about trees specifically. Because climate change, of course. So I just, in terms of the livability, the heat, and the challenge we have our trees, and that's something that I don't think the city really has focused on. And I hope that through your office, and maybe we can work, and maybe this is the alliance to do it. So thankfully, the city is finishing up its street tree inventory. As of post on the website, as of today, there's 16 neighborhood councils left out of the 99 that haven't posted the tree inventories yet. So that means, do the math. So what's that? 83 have been done. That's great. The issue is, what do we do with that information? We see how many missing empty tree wells that there are. We see how many tree stumps that there are, but the city does not have the funding. It does not have the staffing. And so that means it's going to have to be partnership, private organizations. And again, these are the public road. I'm not even talking about city parks. I'm not talking about private property. We do know the challenge with increased densifications and ADUs, that a lot of our trees on private property are being removed. Our opportunities for large trees are, being reduced. But I wanted to bring something else that, so two things I'd really like to have a focus on. When urban forestry comes and say, okay, here's your tree inventory, I haven't seen the commitment of the city via its budget or via partnerships or private funding, whatever, to really solve the problem. There's one more thing, though, that I want to, just from a perspective of someone who, and this is not indicative of the whole city, but my neighborhood was built in 1949, 1950. So after World War II, the trees were planted then. So those trees are 75 years old. And because of drought, because of disease, probably resulted to the drought, they are now, and they are now losing their, the end of their lives. They're being cut down. So for one, and I know there's older neighborhoods in the city, and I know that there are definitely portions of the city that are much more in need of that, and that's been identified. But what the city is not realizing, I don't think, is that there are vast areas of the city that had, if you will, an urban forest tree canopy 20 years ago, that now is virtually not there, or maybe it's only 10 or 20% of what it was. And so what you may say, okay, well, these neighborhoods were developed, the developer planted the trees, we're good to go, let's move on to the things. And I'm just saying my concern that this is, I don't know if we're ever going to catch up, honestly. given the fact this is, this is an ongoing effort. It may be 75 years or 100 years, and you still have all these other areas still to be done. So if you, based on your experience, and if you give us some hope and how we could maybe work together with the city to help, move this to a better direction.
Yeah, thanks. Well, thanks for bringing that up. I would say that we have both Randall and I heard a lot about trees. I think one of the things that we're trying to get a handle on is everything around trees. I mean, I'm very familiar with DWP's efforts around supporting city plants and the mostly focused on private property. I mean, you raised issues around the public right of way. So trying to make sure that all of this is working together, because especially, with more extreme heat, we really need to ensure that we are both preserving and expanding the tree canopy, focusing, both on places where there's a complete lack of trees, but as you said, and I appreciate you raising, the trees that have been there for a while, and you want to make sure that we preserve the urban canopy. So as I noted my opening, one of the challenges we faced was just getting into the budget process pretty late. So I think we are, going to make sure that we're working with all of the departments who have a role in our tree canopy, street services and urban forestry and the chief forestry officer and DWP and others in rec and parks. So I think this is an issue we're definitely going to pay attention, are paying attention, going to pay attention to, and I particularly appreciate you reminding us that we also have to worry about preserving the existing tree canopy. So both Randall and I have met with representatives from the Community Forestry Advisory Committee. I know there's overlap in this group with those folks, and really appreciate all the input. And just if you've got specific suggestions, I appreciate what you've raised this evening. Please send them along, because we're really trying to get our arms around everything the city can and should be doing around trees.
Great, thank you. AJ, and please introduce yourself. If AJ is not there, we'll go to Caesar.
Hi, I'm from West LA Sawtell Neighborhood Council from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. You had mentioned that communities are going and are being disparately impacted. And so among those communities in particular, I was looking at are the elderly, and that they are the fastest growing group demographically. And also it's projected they're going to reach 10 million in population in California by 2030. And so there's a Los Angeles plan for equitable aging. And I was wondering, because the elderly are the most vulnerable in terms of their health, in terms of their limited mobility, and particularly in Los Angeles, also language makes a huge difference. Up to a third of the elderly don't speak English very well. And so is there a plan that integrates all of this around climate resilience, so that climate resilience in particular focuses on protecting the most vulnerable, which are our elders?
Well, thanks for raising that. Yeah, we want to, I think one place where one part of the sustainability equation, I think we have a lot of work to do is around a comprehensive approach to climate resilience. the city has done resilience plans, but they've been sort of more generally focused. And I think that's an area we will look closely at and really try to make some progress. I think we've got some good, there's stuff, sort of around the city. But I think as you pointed out, I mean, if we really have to look at vulnerability and vulnerable populations. You probably know the Department of City Planning is supposed to complete a climate vulnerability assessment. So my understanding is that they've the RFP closed and they are working on the selection of the contractor. So I think that will that's supposed to look at the neighborhood level. I think the overlay of looking particularly at vulnerable groups is a really important piece of how do we address climate resilience. I think even looking at things that, what's an inventory of things that the city may already be doing for a variety of reasons, which may provide some responses on some of the vulnerability. Now, for example, DWP has its Cool LA program, really trying to get air conditioning into people's hands where they need it, and has for a number of years supported Department of Aging by helping them to provide box fans for elderly. Your point about language is spot on and something that we have to keep in mind. So I appreciate you raising it. We got a lot of work to do on this, and hope that you all will help be a part of that process.
Yeah, well, you raised a brilliant point right now, because I'm actually on the advisory group for the West Side community plan update, and we were addressing this issue with city planning, and somebody raised the point about talking across towers. And when we raised this point, they didn't have they couldn't say much to us about it. So I will probably send you an email and contact you with the city planning plan. Okay,
Yeah,
great. Thank you so much, Nancy. Have a good day.
Thanks.
And Cesar, the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office is really focusing on some of this. Actually, frankly, I'm concerned that the emphasis on heat is taking away from the emphasis on climate change mitigation for the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office. So that's my little soapbox. But we are partnering with them on the heat piece. So that's something for you to know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. I often find it's the other way around, but it is a good reminder that that we need to continue to focus on both. Thank you.
Well, okay, since you thanked me, I'm just going to stay on my soapbox for one more sentence.
Sure.
I have been a little chagrined to realize that the heat office are part of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office role, which was added onto the role after it was developed, after it was established, gets so much more media attention. Okay, that was it. I'm done. Chris.
Hi, Nancy. Christopher Huja, Chair, Sustainability Alliance, Tarzan Neighborhood Council. A lot of people were talking about equity, and you mentioned the LA 100 equity strategy. And just in terms of your experience, for my first question, because we've been talking about it as a board, creating equity with sustainability for different parts of our city. And you mentioned it. And what are the best approaches, like whether they're nudges, different things in these communities to educate and to bring everybody, because sustainability is across all types of people, everybody in the city. And so what's your advice to create that outreach as a community, as a city?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one of the challenges is really trying to engage people. Sometimes, and I'm sure it happens to you guys all the time, you get asked by a bunch of city departments for input on different things, and so some of it is just we got to be conscious of who we're engaging with, who are we asking for, input from, so that we're not overburdening people and making it easier for them to participate. And I think DWP in particular has I think done some good things in terms of providing those opportunities for people to participate. I think part of the answer around equity is really to be intentional about it, and to really seek out and to try to think about how you incorporate equity into everything that you're doing. And again, I think DWP is doing some good things with the LA 100 equity strategies, really trying to be intentional about all pieces of the transition to clean energy and address those issues. I think there's lots of issues around associated with the port and the pollution around the port that we have to address. I know you're talking about oil drilling later in your agenda. I mean, that's one where I think the city has made some progress with the ordinance phasing out oil and gas production in the city. So, go ahead.
And just no, I appreciate that. And just more of a technical thing with the compost program that's been implemented. What is the accountability in terms of LA sanitation, in terms of getting data, maybe every quarter, every 6 months, every year, so that those things are actually being implemented the way they're supposed to be based on the state, based on the city?
Yeah, I think, I think that's one thing we're going to have to both, for issues specifically like that, and then just generally look at what those, I know there was a lot of work in the last administration around open data. The controller's interested. They've already reached out on some of working together on providing data and updates, and looking at opportunities for open data. So so we'll continue to kind of look for those opportunities. I think there's a lot that we can unpack there, and again, if you have any specific suggestions, the compost one, I made a note. See if we can follow up and make sure they're getting some information out for all of you.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mindy.
Yes, hi. Thank you. So Nancy, if I could, by Nancy first name, thank you so much for being here today. Having you in your position early on, I think it's a real, shows us about the fact that the mayor is really serious about this issue of sustainability. So,
Mindy, can you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, sorry. Yes. So I'm Mindy Mann, and I'm with the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council. And I'm also on the board of Tree People. So as Glenn mentioned, so trees are, obviously a big issue for me. And so a few things, and I also want to ask about something else as well, if I could, but beginning with trees. So yes, it's really important that we're focusing on planting more trees. But as you mentioned, Nancy, there's that other element. If you're planting trees, but you're not preserving what we already have, then you're not getting anywhere. And unfortunately, we're not, and we're actually losing canopy every year. So yes, we need to plant more trees, and especially when we're talking about equity in areas and neighborhoods that don't have trees. But when we're losing, the mature trees that, are much larger and already providing a very large canopy, then we're really losing. And every year, whether it's both, in the hillsides where I live, we have a lot of the trees that provide, clean air for the entire city. And of course, we're losing among the street trees every day when there's a new development, trees are being lost. So it's great that we have a plan for the long term, but I also worry in the short term. We had a plan that was done by Dudek, and he had a plan. He said that we could, in 1 year, very quickly, really achieve a lot. And my concern is we often do research and plans, and then they sit and we don't do anything with them. So one question is, what can we do also in the short term while we're making these better plans for the long term that we say, like for 2030, 2035? So that's one thing. What can we do in the short term? I mean, the river is a perfect example too. We have all these wonderful plans for the last few years, and yet we haven't gotten anywhere in terms of trying to preserve the river and make it, you know, a wonderful place for people to come and enjoy, and then put this river back to where it once was. So, you know, I think all of us become very frustrated. So my question to you on that, and if I could afterwards ask one more question, I'd love to hear what you have to say about what we can do short term, and what you think the mayor, you know, hopes to do short term. My other question has to do with carbon neutrality and what we can do about what's already on the books about the gas blowers in the city. Because, you know, the leaf blowers create a lot of pollution, more than cars do, but nobody seems to want to talk about it. And, you know, if we could, you know, have some kind of program like a carrot program instead of a stick program, not punishing people, but having people turn in their leaf blowers and get the electric blowers instead, we could have much cleaner air, and people who are using them also wouldn't be suffering, because it's really, you know, a health hazard for them as well. So those are my
Okay,
two.
Mindy, yeah, that was a lot, and I am starting to get anxious.
done.
I think the deputy mayor needs to leave at a hard 7:30, and I want to make sure
I'm
that
done.
everybody has the
Wait,
opportunity.
those are
to-
my two questions.
Yeah, I think on the short term, I mean, that is absolutely the mayor's focus, and she really appreciates that we have long-term goals in place, and she's really wants to say, you know, what are we going to do this year? What are we doing next year? What are we doing for the next 4 years? You know, what are we going to do by the time the Olympics get here? So that's we're kind of going back through all of the plans that are in place and really trying to focus on what are the things that we can do, you know, this year, next year, you know, next 4 years, and in time for the Olympics. So, you know, that's what we're all working on right now. And I think trees and the LA River are both two areas where there's a lot we can try to focus on over the next year and the next couple of years. I mean, the one other thing I'd say is even two things. One, you know, we did get kind of late into the budget process, so I think we'll have more opportunities for next year's budget to sort of start from the beginning and really try to look at the priorities in the city budget. You know, we were able to do some things on the margins, but we were pretty late in the process. And the other thing is, and things like trees and the LA River also, is to look at opportunities for both federal and state funding. State things aren't looking so good for the state budget, but the governor's talked about a climate bond for the 24 ballot, and so we're looking at there's a couple of proposals in Sacramento for that. So we're looking at that, and there may be some opportunities for funding there, and of course from the federal government. So I think all of that is in the relatively shorter term to try to secure some of that additional funding on the gas blowers. I know that I tried while I was at DWP to see if we could convince our landscaping crews to switch out to electrics. Did a lot of kind of outreach and education with the landscaping crews, and I know that there have been programs at both the California Air Resources Board and the South Coast Air Quality Management District that offer incentives to replace those gas equipment with electric and other non-polluting. So it's been a while since I've looked at that issue, but I'm happy to take a look at it.
Thank
We've
you.
shared those both the AQMD program just got up again, and we have shared that. And I honestly think, Mindy, I'll just say super fast, I think things are changing, because what I'm hearing from people who use them is that the newer electric ones are just so much better that we're sort of at the point where we're gonna see some improvement, but it's taken a long time. Charles,
Nancy, thanks for coming. I want to just quickly follow up on a couple things some other people have said. I'm on the NCSA board. I'm also the trees committee liaison for the board, and there's been a lot of talk about trees, which I appreciate the points that Glenn and John, Mindy, and others have made. One really important thing is kind of a point you made earlier on a different topic where you talk about how we have to keep thinking about multiple issues with climate change while we're approaching sustainability. And that couldn't be more true when it comes to trees. One thing that has been pointed out by the city inventory of our trees is that in the 470 square miles of LA, we have now less than 3% of our street trees that are native. And the city continues to plant almost exclusively non-natives. And of the thousands of trees that went in last year in street trees from the city, less than 1% were native. So they're actually getting worse in the situation it is. And this is at a time when we've lost 90% of our pollinators locally, 90% of our songbirds that are connected to those pollinators. And, there are all kinds of other issues dealing with soil health, water use, green waste that connect to using native trees. So many departments are entrenched in continuing to plant non-native species, and they have a whole laundry list of reasons why they don't want to change. I can tell you as a certified California native plant landscaper, those don't hold up to scientific scrutiny. We need to get some top-down pressure for the city departments to start incorporating native species to preserve the ecosystem while we're dealing with heat index, while we're dealing with increased canopy coverage, especially since Glenn mentioned we're losing so many of these trees aging out in the next 25 to 50 years. This is an important opportunity to restore an ecosystem and really make it a lifeboat while we've got fires going on outside the city to really preserve biodiversity in the city. And so I just wanted to pass that along to you. And thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah, thank you. No, appreciate it. And we'll definitely take a look at that. And pollinators, and that was something I worked on at DWP. We were looking for opportunities on DWP property to encourage pollinators. But thank you, and we'll definitely take a look at that.
thank you. Lionel, who just added a little bee emoji.
you.
Go ahead, Lionel.
Hi, my name is Lionel Mares. Welcome, Ms. Nancy from Sun Valley Area Neighborhood Council. Speaking as an individual, I'd like to add and echo the concerns of Mr. Glenn Bailey and Mr. Charles Miller. I used to work for Tree People part-time, and when I spoke to my community, right, like Pacoima, Sun Valley, Arleta, Panorama City, and other areas, many people have expressed interest in having trees on their parkway and front yards, but they told me, the residents told me that they cannot afford to water a tree because there's like a commitment to water. And I also agree with Mr. Miller about more native species should be prioritized. And many people would like more trees, but they can't afford it because they're low income. And I understand the city has a budget issue because the urban forestry department is understaffed and underfunded, and the city should do more to invest in those departments. And I understand it's all about money in order to the city to take care of the trees, because many of the trees that I see when the city plants them, the sticks, they forget to remove them and it harms the tree. It stunts your growth or things like that. But I feel bad because I wish I could do more, but there's so much that I could do. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks.
AJ, I think is with us.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Pardon me for not having my camera on. I'm in the middle of cooking dinner, but just introducing myself, Alvin Waters, NCSA Energy Committee. Just one quick thing that I do need to bring up is I'm very enthusiastic about LADWP's plan for, their 30,000 foot view of the study. One of the things that I do need
I'm
to
sorry, do you mean that, are you
mention-
referring to the LA 100 study?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, getting back to my point, with me kind of being the boots on the ground, working within the solar industry, I think my comment to that is with everything that I deal with the department, a part of me wishes that I could believe that. And I know that some people on here might disagree with me, but But, you know, LADWP, I mainly deal with the electrification division. They're staffed at only 3 people. So if they're only staffed at 3 people, and I'm constantly dealing with a lot of red tape to push a project through that's huge to, you know, helping to fulfill LA's goals. I guess, how am I supposed to believe that is the question.
How are you
No,
supposed to
thanks.
believe what?
Yeah,
I guess what I'm trying to get at is, how am I supposed to believe the part of LADWP's goals to be 100% renewable?
Oh.
If people like me are having to deal with the difficulties of pushing a project like solar through.
yeah, thanks. I appreciate you raising that. And, I would say that I'm not surprised to hear that. We hear that a fair amount. And I think that's something we've been working with the department on, trying to, both in terms of electrification as well, and solar, as well as just getting, for some of the housing developments as well, affordable housing, the mayor's executive directives under the emergency as well. So, the department is got to staff up. They have a lot of vacancies. They need to get people in the door, get them hired, trained. They have to look at their own processes and make sure that they're not, creating additional delay. And I would just say that I understand your frustration, and something we're definitely in contact with the department about, and we'll continue to try to keep them, focused on getting people through the process so that they're not, things aren't getting hung up internally. So, you have my commitment to make sure that we try to stay on top of the department on those kinds of issues.
I appreciate it, Nancy. And just so you know, I do work cooperatively with the department as well, and do my best to maintain my patience.
Understood, and I understand the frustration as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Melanie, and then Charlene, and then we will let the deputy mayor leave us. Go ahead, Melanie.
Thanks. Hi, Nancy. It's good to see you.
Hi.
I actually have a really long list, but we have no time, so I'm going to try to keep it super tight.
And you have to introduce yourself super fast.
Oh, so sorry. Melanie Winter, with Studio City Neighborhood Council Sustainability Committee, and with the River Project and. So a couple things I wanted to raise with the focus on housing. I feel like we're missing a few synergies and some opportunities. We have a long-standing park deficit. We have goals across all of our water plans that ask us to reduce impervious surface cover in the city 32% by 2034, which is significant. That's over 100 acres in the city. And we have, a lot greater flood risk than our local agencies have been willing to admit, as the UCI study highlights. The potential losses from that are greater than from fire and from earthquake. And I don't see some of these issues surfacing in our plans, and I don't see a recognition of the synergies there. Our recent housing and safety element does not recognize the flood risk, doesn't talk about flood in the way it talks about fire risk areas. The recent ordinance that was passed to accelerate housing does the same, talks about avoiding high fire risk areas and sea level rise, but not flood. So our floodplain management plan is focused on FEMA maps that are 40 years old and is not incorporating the new data. This has significant detrimental consequences, and I think we're sort of skating past it, partly because of the agreement with the Army Corps on the Arbor study, which needs a relook. But what I want to ask you, and I can keep going.
You don't have time. I'm sorry.
The question is, how many of the goals in the Green New Deal sustainability plan are being looked at for translating them into policy? Because we have lots of great plans, but so few of these great goals have any chance of being implemented without policy, without teeth. And that's a big thing. And I'm wondering if there's an effort to look at where we can focus on making these goals achievable through policy.
Yeah, I mean,
Thanks.
that's what thank you, Melanie. Thanks for all your work. Yeah, that's actually what the exercise we're engaged in right now is just, looking at both what the status of some of the Green New Deal goals are. I think that, as I said, the mayor is very focused on what can we get done. And it's important to have these long-term goals, but if we can't, if we don't have a way to implement programs and policies to get to those goals, that's not a good place to be. So we're in the middle of that exercise right now. We will, we've got some other, we'll have some opportunities also, make sure that we're not just talking to ourselves, but try to engage with folks who have been working in these areas for a long time and try to make sure that we're both incorporating all of your input and also calling on you to help us sort of interpret and make sure we're addressing these issues. So, I think the mayor is happy to sort of inherit a lot of these long-term goals, but is very focused on sort of what are we really going to get done? What do we have to get done? What are the steps we have to do to show real progress? So, so stay tuned for more. Thanks for raising it.
Thank you. Do you have time to hear from Charlene?
Sure.
Thank you very much for staying over a little late. Charlene, go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Charlene Moyer, Zapata King Neighborhood Council and Transportation Committee for NCSA. So my question is really about tree maintenance. We have a lot of trees that have been planted in CD9 Zapata King Neighborhood Council. Was there any discussion on how to take care of the new trees, to follow up on the maintenance of the new trees in the next year? I know we're supposed to, stakeholders I can't think. Residents are supposed to take care of them, but some of the trees are planted on collector streets, so they don't front a house, you know what I mean? So it's like, was there any discussion on that?
I don't know offhand, no, but I'm happy to check into it, and then why don't we get back in touch. But I appreciate you raising it. I will check in on that. I don't know I don't know specifically for that neighborhood, but I'm happy to look into it.
Well, maybe that's just something we can do. We could come up with something, and some of us could help one another in taking care of it. I didn't know if there was a plan for that, so maybe that's something we can talk about soon. Summer's coming.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. There was a question in the chat about how to reach out to you, Deputy Mayor Sutley. I have your email address, but I don't know if you want, that's fine.
Yeah, and email's
Okay.
fine. So it's nancy.sutley@lacity.org. Please feel free to reach out.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us and for hearing so much, in particular about trees. I'm always surprised by what rises to the surface.
No,
It was
it's
clearly
great.
trees. Yes.
We all love trees. I love trees. I'm glad that you all love trees, and we want to make sure the city loves trees. So thank you for all your questions, and thank you for having me on, and thanks for all your work, and look forward to more opportunities to interact and engage and hear from you and work with you on all these issues. They're very important to the mayor, important to the city, and I know important to all of us. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Now everybody's welcome to stay. You don't have to, if you came just to listen to Deputy Mayor Sutley, you don't need to stay. We're going to transition to some NCSA business. We're going to, I hope, vote on 3 items and then get some committee updates and that sort of thing. So the first item is and these are things I should say that I had hoped to ask you folks to vote on via email, but I frankly did not have the capacity to get to that. So we had a little extra time this evening that was not anticipated. So we decided to use it for this. And Charles came up with a very fun idea of experimenting with the consent agenda tonight. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work because frankly, I'm already pulling one of those 3 items. And because Ravi is here and I do want him to be able to talk about the Murphy oil drilling site, but maybe he can talk about it without us getting into a conversation about it. I don't know if that'll work. So I guess first what we should do is ask about these 3 items. It's the municipal lobbying ordinance, and Jamie York from the Reseda Neighborhood Council is here to help us talk about that. So I'm frankly pulling that one because I also had a conversation with Krikorian's office. I did not plan to have a conversation with Krikorian's office, but through a series of, I don't know, it's a small world, and I ended up talking about it at length on Friday. So I want you guys to know about that. So the other 2 items are the neighborhood councils meeting virtually. I hope you were able to see the letter I drafted. And we can vote on that. That's probably a simple one because I think we all know what we want, and I think neighborhood councils are pretty united on this effort. And the last one is the Murphy oil drilling site, which I think is pretty simple because we have since 2015 been taking strong positions on oil drilling sites, and this is entirely consistent with those previous positions. So I don't think it's controversial for us at all. But I guess the first question is for these 2 items, the neighborhood council meeting one and the oil drilling one, if anybody wants to pull those from the consent agenda for us to discuss them before we vote. Okay, we have some questions, so that might mean yes. Glenn, go ahead.
Yes, the one on neighborhood council voting,
Okay.
virtual.
Okay, this is what happens with consent agendas. We try them and they don't always work, and that's fine. This is the system. Okay, Kathy, go ahead.
And I'm similar. I looked at that letter and there's things in it I don't agree with. So
Okay.
can't really bundle things together that aren't all the same.
Well, you can try, but it doesn't always work. I tried. Here we are, and we get to talk about it. Okay, so I think then we will just do 3 separate votes. I guess we can just go in the order that they're written in, and let's talk about the municipal lobbying ordinance. Jamie gave me some feedback on the letter, which is interesting because it's kind of consistent with how do I say this? It's related to my conversation with Krikorian's office. So first, I guess I'm going to start by telling you my conversation with Krikorian's office, and then we can hear from Jamie, and then we can open it up. We can make little tweaks to the letter or try to figure something out, but I think I think timing is probably important, and Jamie can update us on that as well. So our letter, which I'll try to share with you folks right now in case you have not looked at it, this is our draft letter, I should say. This is what we're voting on tonight. Has these several points. And I met with Patrick Ma, who has taken a lot of Aaron Ordauer's responsibilities in Krikorian's office. We had a very good relationship with Aaron, and when he left, I was scrambling to find out who we should be working with, and it turns out that Patrick has taken over a lot of Aaron's portfolio. So I met with him yesterday. He's very intelligent, very knowledgeable, and was, his job, of course, is to present Krikorian's position, which I frankly don't understand. And Krikorian's position is that he thinks that with the limitations, how do I say this? Lobbyists have some limitations, and I can try to share that screen. Let me share that screen too. I thought this was a fascinating conversation for me. So I'll share that screen right now. And maybe somebody can put this in the chat, but maybe that'll be too complicated. Okay, bear with me. I have to pull that up. Lobbyists have some limitations, and apparently Krikorian thinks that if we say that folks representing labor are lobbyists, that this is unduly limiting their voice. I frankly, I'm just going to be super candid. I feel strongly that that is silly. and disingenuous. I don't understand it, but that's just my opinion. It doesn't mean it's our opinion, it's just my opinion. So this is the list. I'll put the link to this in the chat. This is the list of limitations, which frankly are basically like common sense and about money. And I don't know why we want, why I should say Krikorian wants money to serve as a voice in, in our policy making. So I'm a little dismayed, frankly. The other thing that came up, oh yeah, the link to the letter is on the website. If somebody can share that. Maybe Charles, could you share that? I can try to do that. It's just I'm multitasking so much right now. Let me see if I can grab it. Wait, I actually got it. So I'll share, I'll put the link in. But it's also on the event page where you RSVP'd to get here, just so you know. The other thing that came up that is related to what Jamie talked about is this non-profit filing thing, which I don't totally understand. So I'm going to shut up and let Jamie talk.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So municipal lobbying ordinance hasn't been updated in almost 30 years, and this is a passion project of mine. 45 neighborhood councils have filed on it in order to try and close some of the loopholes that were inherent in the ordinance that were making enforcement a problem and that have just been kind of plaguing the city. And it got scheduled, which was great, and they were on their way to adopting something that was really good. And then all of a sudden it got held up. So I'd like to maybe just start with the labor piece first. So right now, in the current municipal lobbying ordinance, labor organizations are not exempt from the lobbying ordinance. And if you look at the sort of top 20 most populous US cities and the top 10 most populous California cities, there's no kind of broad exemption like what Krikorian is proposing anywhere in the country. So right now, our ordinance, it essentially allows, like, if you're representing your member at like a hearing, that's not lobbying, or if you're doing stuff around your own contract negotiations, that's not lobbying, but everything else would be. And what this would do is it would make it any union, regardless of whether or not it has an employment relationship with the city, exempt from those lobbying registrations, and it would instead make them a nonprofit filer. And the nonprofit filers, with what Krikorian's suggesting, would still be able to do things like serve on commissions, would have less restrictions on the things that they can do. It's essentially, they're still lobbyists, but they're not calling them lobbyists. And when you take away calling them a lobbyist, you allow them to do more things within the city. And to me, that is problematic. And the other thing is, unions are 501c5s. They are allowed to spend their money politically, unlike 501c3s. They can do things like independent expenditures, which 501c3s cannot do. They can endorse candidates. So this idea that we're going to exempt the unions from lobbying registration would make us different from anywhere else in the country, and it would set a precedent. It's hard for me to talk about how bad this would be, especially given that so many of the scandals in our city have been lobbying scandals. When we look at the Fed tapes, the part that people don't talk about is that that was also a lobbying scandal, because the Federation of Labor was lobbying that the maps be drawn in a certain way that was beneficial to their political goals. So that's one example of how that's lobbying. And yeah. So the other area of contention is around 501c3s. Right now, they're trying to say that all 501c3s should be exempt from the lobbying registration. Again, that is not what our current municipal lobbying ordinance allows, and most other municipalities do not have an exemption that is as broad as that at all. There are some small carve-outs, but Chicago actually just undid its exemption for nonprofits that they now have to register. For the most part, they do have to register. And so what I'm worried about is that anything that you open up for a 501c3 that's acting as a good actor you then open up for a 501c3 that's acting as a bad actor. And that's the thing that I'm terrified of. I think we're all really familiar with astroturfing groups. We're all really familiar with how money can make itself look like a community group, especially around environmental issues. And we've already seen that happen. And I don't want to lose the tracking of that data, but I also don't want the ability for big money to be appointed to certain kinds of commissions. And I think at the end of the day, Los Angeles is a big enough city and we have very talented people. We do not need people who are being primarily paid to lobby the city to be appointed to our commissions. It's wrong. So I hope that answers, sorry, I was a little rambly, but I'm happy to ask any questions or answer any questions.
Now, let me mention a couple of things I didn't mention. Patrick talked about one of the reasons I guess Krikorian's office likes this nonprofit filer idea is they're concerned, apparently, I frankly don't really know what I believe, but they're saying that they're concerned about the fact that the term lobbyist has a really negative connotation. And I just think that's such a silly reason not to call people lobbyists. If you're a lobbyist, you're a lobbyist. They have negative connotations because a lot of bad things have happened. But if you have a system where you have transparency and you're educating people, I think, you know, that's fine. People can be identified as lobbyists without a negative connotation. We should work to change that. The other thing that I thought was a little silly is that apparently nonprofits are also really complaining about the burden of the filing. And I would super supportive of that. I have a background in process improvement, and I am frankly very intolerant of unnecessary bloated bureaucracy and stupid forms and stupid reporting. And Patrick was talking about some of the stuff they have to report, and I'm like, you know what, that's probably on their website. Like, you know, get somebody to go pull that information or whatever, come up, simplify that. Some of this stuff, you know, really find out what you need. So I think there is probably a very real problem, but I think not calling people lobbyists is not the solution to the problem. You want to make sure that you're addressing the problem with the appropriate solution. And this sounds like a real mismatch to me. Jamie, go ahead, and then we'll open it up to other folks.
Yeah, and I do want to say that many of the neighborhood councils, including mine, that filed on this actually recommended an exemption for smaller nonprofits. Some recommended it at the 50,000 level, some at like the 250,000 level, some at 750. It was a variation, but many of them did file recommending exempting smaller nonprofits from these duties. Right now, with what Krikorian is advocating for, there's no exemption for any nonprofit. So as long as you have one staffer who's doing $5,000 worth of lobbying work, that person would have to register regardless of the size of your nonprofit. But in the same sense, if you are a multi-billion-dollar nonprofit, like something like Kaiser, for instance, would be a really good example, or USC would be another good example. Both nonprofits that are doing lobbying in our system currently that have billions of dollars in revenue per year, they're highly paid, highly compensated in-house lobbyists would no longer be considered lobbyists. And that is insane to me.
Okay,
so
Mindy, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to give you a perfect example about, I don't know if you know about what happened with the hotel here in Benedict Canyon.
I don't.
Okay, so I think that at some point we came and spoke to you about it. So basically there's a developer who's, I'll try to be really brief because it's such a long story, who's been trying to build a hotel here in Benedict Canyon. And in order to do so, he had to request a change in the, sorry, I just drew a blank all of a sudden, in the general plan, because it's a residential area and it does not call for or allow for any kind of development other than residential, okay, no commercial development. So it's been going on for years, and finally Katie Yaroslavsky, our new council person brought a motion before city council, which was heard about 2 weeks ago, asking that it be rescinded and not be considered based on a conflict of interest and a whole bunch of reasons, okay? And originally, when she brought it to Krikorian a few weeks ago, it sounded like he was in favor and going to allow it. But the unions, because the developer supposedly has promised that this was going to be a union job and that they were all going to, you know, get jobs to build this hotel here in Benedict Canyon, even it's crazy and it's totally inappropriate. The unions have been calling all of the council people and lobbying them, saying, you know, you got to vote against this motion to rescind it, and you've got to vote in favor of letting the process go forward. So they have been lobbying heavily, all the council people. And at the end, a lot of the council people, because of course they're all paid heavily on a regular basis by the unions, they voted it down in essence. It ended up being 7-7, but they all know where the money comes from when they want to be reelected comes from union. So they were afraid to vote against the wishes of the union members. So you want to talk about influence of the union? I mean, they don't live in our area. They have nothing to do with this area, but they were able to, you know, gather their forces and use their influence to get the council members to vote against the motion and against the wishes of our council member and the residents who live in this area who will be impacted. And honestly, you know, it's just unconscionable. So there you have it.
Okay, that's very helpful. And of course, they would still be able to do that, but they would need to be registered as lobbyists and be limited in terms of their gifts, so their influence is constrained.
Right, and be upfront about what they're doing.
Right. Okay, so let's try, I'm gonna try to wrap this one up in 10 minutes, folks, so keep that in mind. AJ, go ahead.
Yeah, there's one quick point that I needed to bring up about, you know, what my neighborhood council's been dealing with a couple of lobbyists for a couple of developments that we're working on. So first off, there was a traffic study that one of the lobbyists did, and one of the advocates who were trying to stop the project actually did a study that basically caught the lobbyist in a lie. There was another one within our district where the lobbyist was asking to basically come to the facility where we were having our meeting beforehand, and we told them that we have to get consultation from the city attorney's office to wait for us. They went ahead and went in there to set their equipment up without telling us, which unfortunately is a liability issue to the city. So I think these two examples that I raised is a perfect example of pushing in support of Jamie's letter. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is actually not Jamie's letter. I used Jamie's letter as a template and made it much shorter and a little softer. Jamie's letter is much stronger, and many of you signed on to it. I did not sign on to it because it was a little too antagonistic for me to some nonprofits who we work with. But Jamie, you did have a suggestion about how to edit ours. Do you want to put that? I can give you editing access, or you have commenting access. Do you want to put your change in there and we can vote on the letter?
It was just to replace where in the third paragraph where it talks about lobbying being a commissioner, just to change that to the nonprofit filer, because lobbyists can't be commissioners. It would only be nonprofit filers, but that would be the change.
Oh, I
and then
see.
Take
out lobbyists and say that nonprofit filers could also be, but that's not a thing that exists now, right?
Yeah, lobbyists can't be commissioners currently under the
Nonprofit
law.
filers don't exist right now, is that correct?
But they're proposing to make nonprofit filers exempt from that and be able to be commissioners. And Nithya Raman did do a thing basically saying they couldn't be on the ethics commission, which was a good start. But frankly, given some of the shenanigans that we've seen just throughout the city, I don't think in any capacity people that are being paid to lobby the city should be given the access that commissioners essentially have. It's too much. And it takes the safeguards off the entire system, and it would open things up like essentially lobbyists being on the redistricting commission. That scares me. Or the LADWP commission. That scares me. So that's the only real thing. And then to Mindy's point that I wanted to say is that her example is a perfect example of what the 501c5 exemption would open up, because right now the example that she gave, that's very clearly lobbying as long as they're doing enough hours per quarter, but it would completely go away that it would be considered lobbying if Krikorian's change goes through. And it's a dangerous and unprecedented change that should not be allowed. It's bad. It's really bad.
Let me ask, I just realized there might be another inaccuracy in this. Jamie, and under number 1, it says right now, no other city in the country has exemptions for labor unions. Should I say broad exemptions?
Broad exemptions would be better. There are very minor ones around things like member representation or contract negotiation, but the point is that there's nothing like what Krikorian is suggesting where it's broad and open like that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I feel ready to vote. I don't know if folks feel ready to vote. Anybody want to say anything before we take this to a vote? Go ahead, Christine.
I think it would be nice just to add one little detail around October's leaked recordings of so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so discussing redistricting.
Oh.
Because I think just think of it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I can do that later. Well, why don't just regarding redistricting, how about that? I'll share it again. I think that might be, let me share it and see if that works for you. And by the way, I don't want us to get in the habit of wordsmithing with such a large group. Sometimes there are exceptions because they're complicated ones without just one point. Like we're not, so anyway, this is one of those complicated ones. But how about this? I just wrote leaked recordings regarding redistricting.
That's perfect.
Okay. Okay, let's vote. I'm gonna give it to Muriel. Muriel, are you able to do this from the airport? I forgot to introduce our board, by the way, which I usually do. I usually forget. So let's actually do very quick introductions of the board. Charles?
Hi, guys. I'm Charles Miller, NCSA board member, Palms Neighborhood Council, Trees Committee Liaison, and tree hugger in general. There you go.
And Chris?
Christopher Huja, Chair, Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance at large, board member, Tarzana Neighborhood Council, and dad of 2 loud kids behind me.
And Muriel?
You timed it so that the announcements were back on, but I am also a board member. I am the chair of the Transportation Committee, and I'm going to be taking roll call, so hopefully the announcements won't be on.
Okay.
I'm in the airport.
Go for it, Muriel.
Okay, so Lisa?
Yes.
I vote yes. Charles?
Yes.
Yes. Chris?
Yes.
Glenn Bailey?
Yes.
Thank you. Alvin Waters?
Yes.
Thank you. Christine Mills?
Yes.
Charlene Moyer?
Yes.
Okay. Kathy Schreiner? Kathy?
I abstain.
Abstain, thank you. Isabel?
Here.
I'm sorry, what was your vote?
Oh, I thought you were taking a roll. Yes.
Thank you. Sandeep? Sandeep Barla? Abstain, thank you. Robbie Sankaran?
Yes.
Thank you. Patricia Bates?
Yes.
Nish Krishnamurthy?
Yeah, abstain.
Thank you. John Hales?
Yes.
Emmanuel Alcantar?
Yes.
Melanie Winter?
Yes.
Devon Williams? Devon?
He's usually multitasking, I happen to know, so that might be the case. at this moment.
I am, and I'm
Okay.
abstaining.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Lionel Maris?
What are we voting on again, just to be clear?
The letter about the municipal lobbying ordinance.
Oh, yes, the MLO. Is this to persuade Paul Kukarian to not put bad amendments to it, like to make sure we don't want no flaws or loopholes, none of that, correct?
That's the gist.
Yes.
Okay.
And then Mindy Mann?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That was, yeah, it was about 17, 3-0, I guess, if you.
Did you call my name, Meryl?
I noticed in is she, I'm sorry,
Sorry,
Lisa,
I was looking at who was asking?
It's Faith.
Faith
Oh,
Mira.
yeah.
So I'm so sorry.
I still have one more board meeting, so yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Okay.
So it doesn't, it's not about that, Faith. It's if you're appointed, it doesn't matter about that.
Oh yeah, I think I'm in the bylaws. I'm appointed until they appoint someone else, is my understanding. So.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Faith. Okay, so Faith.
Yes.
Okay.
Did we call
It's
Sandy?
actually-
I think she's
Yes,
still.
we did. She
Okay,
abstained.
all right. Gotcha.
Sorry. So it's now 18-3-0.
Okay, fantastic. I'm gonna pull up, so Kathy, I think I know what she didn't like about my letter. So I'm gonna pull up my letter. Give me a minute to grab it. And we will talk about it. But Kathy, why don't you start talking while I'm pulling it up?
Okay, so the part about people not showing their screens, I really don't know where that's coming from because that's not advice that I have received. In fact, we don't really have guidelines for the hybrid meetings yet because we're not
Did you find any?
technically supposed to have them. But the ones that fit the bill about people who can stay away, for 2 meetings, they have to show their screen. So I don't really know where that came from.
It came from me, and this is what we've been told. And you probably don't go to other neighborhood council meetings. I'd love to hear from other folks, but I've been to countless Zoom neighborhood council meetings. And what we're doing here, most neighborhood councils or maybe no neighborhood councils do. They have a webinar system, and you cannot, if you are listening in or if you want to participate, your face is never shown unless you are, and you usually never know how many people are in the meeting. And I think
those have been the rules for 3 years. They decided they wanted a webinar so that there was some control over public comment. So only the board members are shown on the screen, or people that are promoted to panelists because they're presenters. So that's not anything new.
It's not new. It's just an opportunity. And by the way, our advocacy committee supported this, just, so it came from me. It was my suggestion, but I should be clear, the advocacy committee was in support. No, it's not new. So maybe the way I worded it is not clear, but this has been driving me batty for 3 years. And it strikes me as an opportunity to find maybe because I did complain about this 3 years ago, but I made no headway. And it occurred to me that this is maybe the time to try to do that.
All right, although I have to tell you, my neighborhood council, the people that we have who are the public commenters are gadflies. They're very negative. We don't want them on screen. So I guess I have a different point of view.
Well, I mean, I know there's the puppet guy and the other guy who's worse. I mean, I actually find the puppet guy funny, unless he's not. The other guy is never funny. Yeah, it's a problem, but as we, like there's trade-offs we make for a democratic process, right? So anyway, but I hear you. So I'll shut up for a minute and we'll go to Glenn.
Okay, I'm looking at the letter on a different screen, so that's why.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I can pull it up. I'm sorry. Was I going to
Okay.
do that? I forgot to do that.
Oh.
Okay.
So
Let me do that.
so hopefully somewhat in order of my comments. So let me make the comments in that way, and then you can comment on them. In the second paragraph, it says, where hybrid meetings might be ideal theory, at this point, effective hybrid meetings are just a pipe dream for most councils. That is a false statement. There are a number of neighbor councils that are implementing hybrid meetings.
Okay.
Some of them are doing it with $100 costs
Okay,
of minimal equipment. Some of them are going the Cadillac or higher versions, but that's up to each neighborhood council. It's really just the will to do it and, doing the extra effort. So I think that's concerned. By the way,
okay,
let
you
me
think I
just
should
say,
just take out that, let me stop you, Glenn. Should I just take out that sentence or make it, or say many neighborhood councils instead of most, or do you think it's just total, what do you think?
well, I just think pipe dream for most is misleading. Okay, that's my
So this needs
comment.
to be softened a lot.
A lot, yeah.
Okay, I'll
Okay.
just write soften a lot.
And
Okay.
if they don't have access to required equipment, just because, we just got back in April to meetings and folks didn't plan ahead. And what the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment did was they said a suggested equipment purchase that was like $10,000, and people said, "Oh my God, we're not going to spend $10,000 on that." And then some neighborhood councils are starting to realize that you don't need to spend $10,000.
Okay.
So, okay, that's comment number one. Okay, I agree with the rest. Okay, then the next paragraph. So yes, as Kathy mentioned, the requirement for showing faces has to do with board members, not the public attendees. That's in state law.
And I'm
Neighbor
not talking
council,
about board members showing faces.
I know,
mean,
okay.
maybe I wasn't clear. I'm trying
Okay,
to talk
can you-
about other people.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand, but so just know that we've had instances of members of the public. So first of all, there's no reason, some neighbor councils are using the meeting format. And so just be aware that some neighbor councils are doing that. They're
I
not,
know.
okay. So that needs to be accurately in there. Number two.
Well, but I think I think, let me say my understanding, and I could be wrong, but my understanding is they are not, people were advised by Dunn / the city attorney to do some things, and some neighborhood councils, every neighborhood council has interpreted it differently. So I'm not saying that everybody's doing something. I'm saying that there was specific advice from Dunn. If that
Right.
helps.
So they put out EVG protocols, empowerment virtual governance protocols, and the protocol said webinar, and they did that on the advice of city attorney because of some legal liability issues, and they're very real. We have had a stakeholder, and the name has been mentioned here earlier, or not the name, the screen name, and this person, when they were able to, got onto screen and I hate to even say it, but basically it was pornographic activity that happened. And that is one of the reasons that the city advised that now the neighbor council doesn't have to follow that. Now a neighbor council could use the webinar and put everyone in, have them visible. And then if somebody misbehaved, they could remove them from member. That's certainly possible. But here's my bottom line, my most important point. We're at a crucial time right now to try to get Senate Bill 411. It's got through the state Senate with two votes to spare. We are now going to the assembly with a huge question of, can we even get out of local government committee? I'm very concerned that a letter from a neighbor council line, and this is focused just on neighbor councils in LA. I'm really concerned that a letter from an alliance of neighbor councils, and you've represented 73, you put in there 73 neighbor councils, that this is going to upset the apple cart. This is going to be raising some concerns that we don't need to be raising, just to be that we are trying to get this as an opt-in to neighborhood councils to hold virtual meetings. And if we raise some questions that really, if you want to direct them to the city attorney, you want to direct them to city council, done, be my guest. But for this letter to be directed to the state legislature at this very crucial moment is of great concern to me, because I'm afraid that it may fall into the hands, not play into the hands of the people who are opposed to Senate Bill 411, which are the news media organizations that have taken a position against it because they want us to be seen and be seen in person. And so that's an uphill battle. And so now to bring in this thing about the you know, Lisa, I don't know why you interrupt me, but you don't interrupt other people. But I'm
Because
just,
when it's
I can't,
8:10
I have not been able to make a statement on either one of my points without being interrupted. I'm just
and
about done.
it's
I'm just,
8:10, and we all have what's the third thing to vote on and committee updates. That's why.
okay, that's
So
why
I
I'm
have a
being interrupted.
suggestion.
I get it. Okay, so please do not put this forward to the state legislature.
When I have a suggestion, I'm totally happy, 100% happy to have two versions of the letter, because frankly, as you guys know, neighborhood councils are not supposed to make public comments on state bills. So I was conflicted about that, and that's why I wrote it the way I did, saying we support the city council resolutions and we're excited about SB 411. Because I want to be able to be a voice for you folks who are following that mandate not to do state stuff. So I want us to do something because we can, but it's a gray area. So what I can easily do, very easily do, is have two letters, put one in the city council files, and just omit that entire piece that is bothering a couple of you. And I'm understanding your concerns that they're new to me, so I appreciate hearing them. Just omit that piece for the state one. That would be, I'd be totally happy with that, if that works for you guys.
No. This should be postponed. This is not a good time to be putting this through. We can wait at
Okay.
least a month and see what happens.
Okay, I hear you. So that's the other thing. We can just cut it and not add it to keep it simple. Also, it's 8:10, so maybe we keep it simple because this is bubbling up into a bigger conversation that I hadn't anticipated. So that sounds like what we should do. Melanie and oops, Melanie is gone. Charles, go ahead.
If that's what we're gonna do, then I don't need to keep talking.
Okay, yeah, let's just do that because we're running out of time, and you're right, it's my thing. It's been driving me crazy for 3 years, but I can work on another avenue to address that. And I hadn't heard the pornographic thing. That sounds very miserable, and I'm so sorry for anybody who was subjected to that. That just sounds.
I will weigh in just to support Kathy, that I have witnessed in her meetings that she and some of her fellow board members are treated atrociously. I don't think this excludes that, but if there's any danger of upsetting the apple cart, like Glenn said, that's something we should consider.
We frankly, we just don't have time. Like maybe we could hash it out, but time's an issue. So the easiest thing is to cut it, and then we can all support this, I think. Pat. Is that a glass of wine? I love it.
Good
Pat,
idea.
do you want to chime in?
Get my beer.
Pat, you're up.
Unmute. You need to unmute.
Okay, I think she's probably okay. Let's take this to a vote. I think I'm just going to cut that whole section, that paragraph or whatever. I'll look at it later, and I'll soften the other language about the pipe dream piece. I did not know also that there are easier ways to do this. I'm very curious as to what they are, because if they're $100, the NCSA could maybe use them too. Are we feeling ready for a vote on a modified version, just cutting out the part that you guys don't like?
No, I asked you just to postpone the whole thing.
Oh, I don't think we can. I think we need to move for the SB 411.
Can
No,
you
Saying
just
postpone the whole thing. I'm saying postpone that whole section that you don't like. I'm going to remove that. But no, we need to vote on for the 411 thing. That's pretty sensitive, I think.
just do a clean vote supporting 411
Yeah.
as amended?
Well, and the two, and I'm definitely the two LA Council resolutions. That's fine. Yes, you're right. That's the best way to do it. So we're going to vote on supporting. This is how we're going to word it, because we are an alliance and we're not supposed to you guys are not supposed to take positions on state issues. So this is kind of silly wording, but we're supporting the two council, the resolutions. I think they were, maybe I need to check that language because motions aren't resolutions. In support of autonomy, neighborhood council autonomy, and our excitement about or whatever for SB 411. Let's vote on that. So Muriel, where are you? Oh, there you are. Can you do that? Take the roll, call the roll, please.
Okay, Lisa,
Yes.
I say yes. Charles,
I'm sorry, I need a clarification. We're voting just to endorse these the three council files, right? Or
Two council files and kind of a soft endorsement of SB 411. Yes.
I vote yes.
okay. Chris,
Yes.
Glenn Bailey,
Yes, just to support.
Okay. Alvin Waters,
Yes.
thank you. Christine Mills,
Yes.
Charlene Moyer.
Yes.
Oh, okay, interesting. Kathy Schreiner,
Yes.
okay. Isabel,
Yes.
okay. Sandeep Barla,
Yes.
okay. Ravi Sankaran,
I think he left.
okay. Patricia Bates,
Yes.
okay. Nish,
Abstain.
abstain, thank you. John Hale,
Yes.
Emmanuel Alcantar,
Yes.
thank you. Melanie Winter,
Yes.
oh, thanks. Devon Williams,
Yes.
oh, thank you. I'm so sorry for this background. Hold on, sorry.
It's not that bad for us.
It's not that
Okay.
bad.
Okay, thank you. I'm just, it's distracting me. Sorry. Leonel,
Yes, at your service.
thank you. Mindy Mann,
Yes.
okay, thank you. So this one is out of
And Faith,
19.
Faith.
And Faith, yes, Faith.
Yes.
Yes. So we have we have 18 10.
Okay, fantastic. So Ravi texted me that he had to leave. So let's does anybody have anything any concerns or questions about voting to support the letter on the Murphy oil drilling site? And maybe we shouldn't get into the details of the letter, but basically it's I forget the name of the commission, the South LA Area Planning Commission, I think. We're asking them to uphold city planning's letter of determination, mandating that the E&B Natural Resources actually make some improvements to in support of people's public health. Pat, is your hand raised for this? No. Okay, Lionel, is your hand raised for this?
Yes, Madam Chair.
What would you like to say?
I'm just curious, where's the Murphy oil site? Which part of LA
It's
is
in
it?
West Adams. But it's
Which
actually in the UNNC Neighborhood Council. So I don't quite know that area well enough to know that it works, but it's UNNC Neighborhood Council area, I think, but the West Adams neighborhood. There's also a West Adams Neighborhood Council, but anyway, it's in that area. Okay, it sounds like, go ahead.
I said thank you.
Okay, it sounds like we're good to vote. This one, like I said, shouldn't be controversial because we've been taking these votes for years. Muriel, I'm handing it over to you.
Okay, Lisa,
Yes.
I vote yes. Charles,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Glenn Bailey,
Yes.
thank you. Alvin Waters. Alvin?
He might be eating his dinner.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
Okay, sorry.
Christine Mills.
Yes, please.
What?
I said yes, yes.
Oh, thank you. Charlene?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you catch it? Yes.
Okay, thank you. Kathy Schreiner?
Yes.
Okay, Isabel?
Yes.
Sandeep?
Yes.
Thank you. Ravi?
He's not here.
I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. He's not here. Goodness, I need to cross this name out. Patricia Bates?
Yes.
Thank you. Nish?
Abstain.
Abstain, thank you. John Hale?
Yes.
Emmanuel?
Yes.
Melanie Winter?
Yes.
Devon Williams?
Yes.
Leonel?
C. Yes.
Yo contendo, and I'm kidding. Comprendo. Sorry, Mindy Mann.
Yes.
Okay. Faith.
Yes.
Thank you. So now we have 18-1-0.
Okay, thank you guys. That was a little harder than I thought, but we did it. Oh, and Charles has a great suggestion. Charles, you can say these things out loud. This is a great suggestion. Anyway,
Well, I was just saying, when we have ones that we think there's a clear, that everyone's on one side, we can just ask if there are any no's. And if there aren't any no's or any objections, then the chair can just so move that we're all unanimously behind it.
Great
And then you
point.
save the time in the roll call.
yes, I will try to do that in the future. Thank you. And you can always remind me if I'm not.
Yeah, just sorry. Well, so you mentioned that if you say any no's, but you have to make sure that it's like people saying no's are voting members, because that could be confusing. I don't.
That's a good point. Yeah, so we'll talk
You
about
can
that
ask,
as a
is
board.
there
as
any no
mentioned.
from any voting members? We're running out of time. We don't need to talk about the text.
Fair enough. We'll talk about it as a board, and that's a great idea. Thank you. Okay, I want to just share our committee reports. We're at 8:20, which is pretty good. So I think we'll be in reasonable shape. Let me just pull them up. Wait, where did they go? Sorry, they should be here. Wait, are they? No, just sorry. I got to pull them up. And then we'll go through them. Should be coming up. I don't know why it isn't. Oh, there it is. Okay. I always have too many things open. Okay, so this is actually something for, this is the advocacy committee report. I'll be super fast. Something came up that actually Nancy Sutley alluded to, which is efforts to get air conditioners for renters. Of course, this is critical in some cases, but we are concerned that, you know, if this is done without thought, this could just be exacerbating the climate crisis. So we're going to reach out to Eunice's Hernandez's office about this motion. Draft wildlife ordinance, we really need help, folks. We really need to help. We have very few motions. CIS is submitted on this. So please, if you haven't submitted one, this is moving very slowly. We thought this was going to pass last November. Please submit your CIS. Sepulveda Basin. Melanie, are you here? You still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you give a little update on the meeting that I had to leave? Just like a 1-minute update on where you think we are right now?
Sure.
Thank you.
So the motion itself is not really being calendared to go through the committee, but there has been pressure being put to bear on the consultant team, and they're making baby steps in the right direction. They're missing some key meaningful steps on the fundamental underlying design and scheduling and the prioritization of both the effort itself and the implementation. So, but they're adopting language, they're showing pretty pictures, they're crawling in the direction. It's going to take consistent presence at these meetings, focusing on minutia and not being distracted by pretty words and pictures. But everybody so far is doing a great job, and I thank you all for attending these and weighing in.
Thank you. July, we're hoping, I don't know that we'll be able to pull this off, but we are working toward having our July meeting being a discussion on city council size. Because there are going to be some recommendations from Krikorian's office, we think, in the fall. So more to come on that. Democracy vouchers, we passed that support for that last month, and city council is going to be voting on it Tuesday. So if you want to make a public comment, please feel free to. You can remotely for city council meetings. Regarding the inability to do that for committee meetings, I did have a grumpy conversation with another person in Krikorian's office, and I don't know if I remembered to report back on this, but I wanted to make sure you folks knew that I was told that they also are unhappy with the situation. This is a complicated thing involving the city clerk and the city attorney and the state and blah, 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 blah. But they're hoping it will be resolved within the next few months. And our next, because the first Sunday is like 4th of July-ish, we're gonna move our meeting to the 16th. Okay, that's it for that. Energy, AJ, are you here?
I am here.
Great.
Not a lot of updates for energy, except one of the main highlights was our energy committee actually did a tour of the Vista Hermosa oil drilling site. It was a very exciting tour, enjoyed partnering with the Sunrise Movement group. And we will be discussing and recapping at our next energy committee meeting of next steps and further advocacy. We're continuing ongoing discussions of how DWP could incentivize electrification. We're still continuing to research on time of use metering based on Prop 218. Wouldn't be able to cover the conversation of this in this meeting. In addition to that, we're also continuing research on the SoCal Gas DWP marketing as well, based on their tiered billing. And last but not least, I got an exciting update that there's a person who I met from Meals and Motions. I finally got a date for one of his next cooking classes. We're currently in the vetting stages to find somebody to potentially do an induction stove demonstration workshop. So those are my updates.
And I was informally told that we'll be doing that for the Congress of Neighborhoods, probably. So I'm not positive about that, but that's probably what will happen. Thank you, AJ, that was perfect. Trees, Joanne is not here, right?
Joanne is not here. Joanne and I discussed this though, and our meeting that was originally scheduled for the 24th, I believe, of June has been canceled. Joanne has some personal stuff going on for the month of June, so we decided just not to meet, but we're trying to organize something for a future date, and we will get out to everybody who's on the email list soon. If you have any questions, you can contact us at trees@ncsa.la, or you can contact me directly when I put my email at the beginning of the chat. So,
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Charles. And wait, transportation should have been before trees, but it wasn't, huh? Or did I skip it? Yeah, I missed it. I don't know what happened. Sorry about that, Muriel. Go ahead.
Hi, we had a meeting on the 1st last week. They talked about the bus line and leftover transit money from, I think it was the Metro thing. So I don't know. I just copied it from my agenda, but it was like from the Metro Vision plan. There was why did the slide change?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't even touch it. My hand isn't even near it. It's a great question. Couldn't tell you.
Oh, okay, sorry. So we also we had a very lengthy discussion about bus shelters, and then we also mentioned a little bit about traffic deaths, and it was a relatively short meeting.
Yeah, we ended on time or something, didn't we?
Even before time, it was.
Oh, we did?
Very
wow.
early.
That's exciting. Okay, I think that's it for our committees. I think the last thing we want to do is announcements. And hi, Miran. Glenn, Charles, could you do me a huge favor and put the link to the eval again in the chat?
just put it in like a minute ago.
Oh, you did? Oh, you're so good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's wonderful. Okay, announcements. I talked about our July meeting. Our August meeting, I'm 99% sure that we're going to meet in person at Lacey, the LA Clean Tech Incubator. So if you're having fun, it's a cool place to check out, and we'll probably get a tour and stuff. And this will be a hands-on thing. We'll be kind of like working on recycling clothes, because a woman who is she's being incubated. She's not being incubated. Her business is being incubated at Lacey, and it is about the making circular fashion, so that we don't moving away from fast fashion and moving toward reusing stuff. So it should be very hands-on and very fun. And then September, we're planning on doing something with native plants, probably in person around native plants, we hope. I think those are, oh, and then also CMO, the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office that we discussed earlier, is having a meeting on June 29th. I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but more to come, probably just via social media, because that will come out before our next email. So any announcements? Go for it. Nish, would you like to make an announcement?
No announcement, just question, when is that event at Lacey?
Probably August 12th, I think. I have it in my notes. It's the Saturday before when our meeting would be. I'm 99% sure it's August 12th, so Saturday afternoon.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Charles?
Yeah, I just want to invite everybody to the June chapter meeting for LA Climate Reality Project. Put the information in the chat room. We'll be talking about building decarbonization and other things.
Thank you. And Glenn?
I put into chat, but I didn't have all of the links ready to go. So just giving you the website. So Neighborhood Council Budget Day annual event next Saturday, 9:30 a.m. We've got confirmation from Mayor Bass, City Controller Mejia, City Council President Kokorian, Chair of the City Council Budget Finance and Innovation Committee Blumenfield, the CAO Matt Zabo, and a great panel of a very diverse group. So check out the details. Hopefully, those of you who are Neighborhood Council board members received some invitations. If you haven't already RSVP, please do so. Those of you who are not on our list because you're not a Neighborhood Council board member or haven't attended a budget day in the past, go to the website and you can get the registration there. It is virtual. It will be probably the last virtual budget day. So normally it's downtown at City Hall. So save some gas and attend from home this year. Thank you.
Thank you,
Oh,
Glenn. Anybody else?
by the way, it includes the breakout sessions by region. And just know we've got some vacancies in most of the regions for budget advocates. So we'll also be holding elections. So if your neighborhood council has budget representatives, be sure that they attend if they're interested, because they're the only ones eligible. The voting is also can be done by the treasurer and president of the neighborhood council. So if you'd spread the word, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, we're good. Oh, go ahead, Lionel.
I just wanted to update you that on Tuesday, my neighborhood council has agendized the democracy vouchers. So I'm pretty confident that I will persuade my fellow colleagues to vote yes on the democracy vouchers. And last Thursday, the NoHo Executive Committee held a special meeting in North Hollywood to discuss one of the agenda items, the democracy voucher. I don't know if they voted for it, but I'm pretty sure they did because they're supportive of it. Thank you.
That's great to know. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. Thank you guys, everybody. Thank you guys, everybody. Thank you, everybody. And have a lovely evening and to be continued.
Nice to see you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Lisa. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.